everyone. Welcome to the Make Space for More podcast, where we talk strategies for growing and scaling your business in a way that's authentic and aligned for you. I'm your host, Melissa Swink, and today I am so excited to have us joined by a very special guest, Leslie Capps of Wild Women Marketing. I will share more about her in a moment, but first I thought I would share with you how we got here. So Leslie and I are originally connected through an online networking group, and we had several conversations and got to know each other, really enjoy those conversations. And one of the reasons why I wanted Leslie to join the podcast today is because often when I'm speaking with other business owners, it could be clients, it could be colleagues, other people in my network. When the topic of marketing comes up, oftentimes I don't hear people say, yeah, my marketing is really working and we have more clients coming through the doors than we can handle. It's usually like, it's going okay. Or, thankfully, most of our business comes in through referrals. I don't hear a lot of business owners saying that their marketing activities are going well. And so going with our theme of growing your business beyond you, that definitely requires having a solid and effective marketing strategy in order for us to continue to grow and scale our businesses. So I am joined by Leslie Capps today. We're going to dive into her story, how she got into this line of work. We're also going to talk about some of the fundamentals of marketing, just covering the basics, but in a new, refreshing way, not necessarily in, your old marketing textbook, college course days. We're going to talk about what it means today, maybe improving upon some of the things you're already doing in your marketing just to fine tune it a little bit. We're also going to talk about common mistakes that we see happening in the marketing space, and then also sharing some marketing ideas that go beyond social media. Sometimes I feel like we think marketing and we automatically think social media. We think, Instagram reels and stories and TikTok and all these things, but not necessarily that is the only path for marketing success. So all that being said, Leslie Capps is an international best-selling author and master of strategic storytelling. She shows entrepreneurs how to skyrocket their client attraction through powerful messaging. Once you've nailed your story, marketing becomes your oyster, ensuring you excel no matter the method. So welcome, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us today. To take us, into all the things that we're going to discuss, why don't you just share with our audience how you got into this line of work? Because that was something that definitely jumped out at me when I first heard you introduce yourself at a networking event.
Cool. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Super excited. Like, I love Melissa, and if you're working with her, you're in absolutely amazing hands, right? Um, yeah, so I started out as an online coach, and it was really my marketing struggles that I ended up falling in love with marketing, right? I finally found something that worked for me marketing wise, but I was like, ooh, marketing. Now that's super exciting. That's kind of the way my brain works in this strategy type methodology. So I started using specific marketing techniques for people. And again, like, because I'm ultra curious, I'm the ultimate researcher, right? I noticed like that's not a lot of times a problem. Often the problem was people were awkward with sales, or they didn't want to deal with sales. And so they kind of blame the marketing because we'd get lots of people in our funnel, we'd fumble it all around. Then we blame marketing that they're not continuing to get people through our funnel and switch marketing. And we all know that's sort of a recipe for disaster. You just end up with kind of a cluster going on there that's hard to unravel. So I started talking about the marriage between marketing and sales, and either people got it or people looked at me like I was an alien, right? And I ended up at that point being in this project, the book that turned into the bestseller. And one of the pages you were asked to write, what are you passionate about? Well, I've always been super passionate about stories. I've always traveled and loved doing diverse things and then bring those home to the people, right? I would travel and people would say, oh, tell us a story. What did you learn? What did you see? How did it, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes, tell us about your trip, and then you just
exactly.
go
Yeah.
and you share. Yes.
Right. But the quirky stuff too, right? Because I'm that person that notices things out of the ordinary, or people glom onto me and tell me stories. I'm like, whoa, okay. So yeah, but you're right. Yeah, tell me about that. So I was like, why am I not using that as really this strategy that you can start with a story from your introduction, carry it through to your content, to your sales conversation, and really streamline, simplify. Oh my gosh, like just so exciting, right? To have a framework that is very
Yes.
simple and is unique to you. I think that's the other thing. Everybody has a story. Everybody is doing amazing stuff and have big goals, big missions, but it all gets like hung up in our words.
Yes, 100%. What I love about your story is I don't want to say that you kind of stumbled upon this because it seems like this has been a strength of yours from, from the beginning of time. Like from the beginning of you, this is something that you truly enjoyed and that you had this vocation of, being a coach and then you're like, "Wait a second, I really enjoy the storytelling piece of this. I'm falling in love with the marketing side of this. Why don't I pivot and start working and, helping others with their storytelling?" I just think that's so cool how your business kind of evolved to fit your strengths that were always there.
Right? Isn't that so interesting? Like, what is that quote? Like our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. How we don't often recognize what our strengths are. And I'll have to credit human design a little bit. A friend turned me onto it, and I took the human design test, and I'm a projector. For me, that was super enlightening, right? Because
Hmm.
we're 30% of the population. I always knew I never thought like the rest of the world. It was painful in class when people would say, "What do you think?" Because I'm like, I know I don't think like everybody else. So, like, I hate that you called on me, right?
Yes.
But the strategy is really what projectors are great at, seeing that big picture and then fitting in the puzzle pieces versus
Mhm.
puzzle pieces going out. Um, so yeah, that really gave. I was like, oh, I'm totally on the right path, right? Like it fits
Mhm.
with how I'm hardwired, who I am, what I'm passionate
Yes.
about. Yeah, just took me
Yes.
long enough.
So I also have done a little bit of human design study myself. One of my business coaches, she started dabbling in it and I think she's becoming certified in that. But through that, I learned that I'm a generator. So I'm not a projector. So people like me need people like you. And I think that's a perfect segue into some of the fundamentals of storytelling because I understand that it's powerful. It's a powerful tool. I understand that um, it really helps with human connection in general, not just in business, but in our personal lives as well. We love a good movie, we love a good book, we just love that connection through storytelling. But what are some of the fundamentals of storytelling from a business or marketing perspective? Like, where do you start when you begin working with a client?
Sure. And I gotta say, like, I love generators, right? Because as a projector, I need you all. That like, there's no joke, right? I can do this stuff, the little stuff. I'm like, it's not my super strength at all. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So the I think keeping it simple. Usually, what I have people do is like write out what you think your story is, or speak it out. I typically do a free session for people. Tell me your story, and why is that important, and what are the values, what is the lesson. And I think those are sometimes things we don't even think about, the lesson. But a story should typically have a very clear beginning, middle, end, and a lesson. And that doesn't mean that one story can't have multiple lessons or multiple uses. You could use it at your introduction, you can use it in your content just by tweaking it, and you could use it in
Mhm.
the sales conversation again by just switching it up. The beauty of creating stories like that, and I'll try not to get too squirreled off, right? Because I get like excited, but when you create that beginning, middle, and end, now you can change, right? So you
Mhm.
have three different stories. Well, now we technically have nine stories because I can change all these. Like they're my stories, we don't have to be wedded to them in any particular order. We're able now to take those stories that we've practiced and talked out loud, and something comes up, somebody needs you to speak right away. You're like, oh, I'll just use these 3 stories because this is my big goal and these are my in-between lessons. So I think thinking about it like that, but really the crux is the lesson. What's a lesson? What's the goal of our story or goal of stories? I did a talk for a friend in town for a nonprofit. So my goal isn't selling in that. It's not really even, it was more so what I focused on was more engagement and empowerment. And it ended up out of that. Then I got an opportunity. I was asked to be on an international board as an honorary board member. But it's, we talked a little bit about this too, is creating that open door, whatever that means for you, whether it's a sale, just a conversation, opportunities that you don't even see when you're clear on your story and your messaging, like doors will open for you. The other thing I think that's really important as we think about stories is our voice. What voice are we using to tell our stories? And I like Gloria Steinem has always been the voice in my head, like, which is weird because I grew up in a very conservative community. So I don't know how she got in there, but
Isn't
she's
that
been there.
interesting how that works sometimes?
I know. Yeah. I
It
always
stood
think
out
about
to you. It was outside of your norm. It stood out to
right.
you. Yes.
Exactly. Well, and I did crazy stuff because I was like, that's what Gloria would do, right? But channeling, if your voice isn't that voice of empowerment, then find somebody else's who is until you become it. You don't want to be telling stories from the victim aspect. That just leaves people in a weird emotional energy, right? And we're wanting them to take action. If you leave them there, they're not going to take action. I guarantee you. So thinking about that as well.
So
Like that
I
kind
would
of,
love to unpack some of the basics of storytelling because I hear this and I can certainly tell the story of things like how I started my business. And that's something that I have shared so many times that it's pretty comfortable for me to do that. I certainly have shared it on the podcast. I've shared it with potential clients during, sales consultations where they're curious about like, how did you end up in this line of work? That's a very common one. But even going beyond, maybe your story in terms of business, what are some other places that you can draw upon inspiration for stories? Like I know my marketing team is always asking me for client transformation stories where we started working with them and this is what life looked like and what business looked like for them. And then we took all these things off their plate and then now they're able to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe they're taking Fridays off or they're working fewer hours, that sort of thing. But where are some places that the average business owner can find stories or where are some resources you think that they could draw upon to start
sure.
creating those stories in the first place?
Well, I think that's a great idea. And I think, one of the other things, and you hit a little bit on it, is that emotion, right? That emotion and our values. Like a woman told me yesterday or sometime this week, we met in a one-to-one and we were talking about values and how important it is to share those and share those in stories. And she told a story of getting a very lucrative marketing contract against 2 other people, and it was because the woman brought them all into a Zoom room together and then she met with them individually, and the woman said to her, what are you passionate about outside of work? And she said, cat rescue. This is what I've done, this is how many cats our agency saved, blah 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 blah. And the woman hired her right on the spot. Like,
Wow.
so often, right, we don't share our values, and we're all people. We got bigger values than just a business. Whether it's empowering women, saving cats, um, homelessness, like food kitchens, soup kitchens, it goes on and on. So I think that aspect is really important. And stories are everywhere, right? I think, like, we think in our heads, that they have to be something special. But I had a skunk in the window well, a couple weeks ago, and I use that as social media posts because I got realizing as I thought about Peppy, we called him Peppy Le Pew, and he ended up in a second window well,
I
right? That
remember you posting about that now that you bring it up. Yes.
exactly. Yeah. So I was like, what is Peppy trying to teach me here? Well,
Mm-hmm.
he's got some amazing branding, right? Like everybody knows the black and white. Awesome branding. He's got an amazing message because when he comes running at you, I was gonna get a picture of him running at me with his tail up, but I was even a little too, yeah, I was like, I'm a little more, yeah, I'm too chicken hearted to get that
Too
guy.
risky. Too risky.
Yeah.
I
I was like,
would
in
have
my
ran
head,
the
I
other
thought
way too.
right. I was like, I thought
Yep.
I should, but no, not gonna do that. Um, but yeah, so being like a skunk in your marketing, being very bold and running with your message because the people who get it are not going to be afraid of that. The people who don't get it, they're going to be afraid and run away. And again, that's okay too, because you're not everybody's cup of tea. I hope I didn't burst anybody's bubble this morning, but like not everybody resonates with us. And
There
it's
was
better
another
to
quote that
know.
I read in a book similar to that, that was, you could be a juicy ripe peach and there's somebody who just doesn't like peaches. It's not good or bad or otherwise. It just is. You're not going
Exactly.
to appeal to everybody. But yeah, you're right. We do business with people. At the end of the day, we're not doing business with a company. We're doing business with people that we can truly connect with. And you do that through sharing things like, I volunteer at this cat rescue, and this is something that I'm really passionate about. And people relate to those kinds of things.
Right, or even stating like I value the things that are core values for our business are honesty and integrity. Okay, like I immediately know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I get this feeling already. I like this person. They told me right up front. Not that you're going to say their dishonesty or whatever, but that being very upfront about this is important to us. Like we over deliver. That may be
Mm-hmm.
a value that
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's looking to hire you would go, oh, okay, I
Yes.
like that.
Yes, 100%. So we've got any other things that we should know when we start crafting some of our stories? The beginning, the middle, the end, the lesson, all very important. Certainly our own stories, client stories. I mean, stories are everywhere, like you had mentioned. Anything else in terms of storytelling that those of us who might not be as on the creative side, if you will, that would be helpful to us.
Right. Well, again, I think I would think about the things that are happening in your own life, whether they're kooky or not. I mean, in your case, um, putting that idea in somebody's head of, have you ever had one of those days where like the dishes are piled up, there's laundry on the floor, the kids are screaming, the dog needs a walk, you need to clean the dog poop, water the lawn. Well, that's kind of what we do for your business is we take
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 of those things off your plate.
Yes. Yes,
So, you
100%.
yeah, I think just relating in sometimes in odd ways that just make people go, oh, I never thought of it like that, right? Now I
Mhm.
have a different perspective, a
Mhm.
different way to understand what Melissa does.
Yes. Yes, love that. So we're telling stories to connect with people, help them better understand how we can serve them and support them and connect with them. But once, we get to the end of the story, then what? Because then we also need some effective calls to action to kind of encourage people to take the next steps, whatever that might be. And of course, it goes back to your goal. I love it. One of the things that you had said to me during one of our conversations leading up to this podcast was, when you're strategic, you open doors. So you need to know what your goal is ultimately for telling this story. Maybe it's to encourage people to, take the steps to work with you, ultimately start the sales process. Or in your case, that nonprofit where my goal is really to educate and be of service. And then ultimately that ended up with, that invitation to join the board, knowing your goals. But how do we encourage people to take the next steps, whatever that might be?
Sure. I think that's always a good question. And I think you need to think about, and I touched on a little bit, is the emotion you're leaving somebody with. So if we've done our job as far as stories and we've empowered and inspired, because I think that should, like, that is always a great goal, right? Whatever goal beyond that. Not so much a sale. I think if we shifted a little bit and thought, okay, I'm going to empower and inspire this person and
Mm-hmm.
leave them, while we might, if we're doing a coaching session, we might look at challenges. So we're going to dig a little deep here and get into some pain, but also at the end, being conscious of at the end where you leave that person. So are they inspired to take that next action? Do they
Mm-hmm.
feel empowered to take that next action, whatever it is? Um, you know that when you're in a sales conversation, you can always, like, I'll use a little sales terminology, third party anchor, right? You can always use that other person who is similar to who you're talking to, who you've helped, and
Mm-hmm.
do kind of a case study there, if you will.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at calls to action, when we're looking at our marketing, do you have some tips for some effective calls to action? Love the emotion piece of it. Love the idea of empowering people. So it's not a hard sale like contact us today. It's empowering them of, if this sounds like, if this is resonating, here's what you can do to, do X, Y, or Z, whether it be work with us or to, you know, get your email under control, whatever that
Great.
that desired outcome is. What are some of your tips for creating some effective calls to action that resonate with people that aren't too salesy, if you will?
Right. I love that you asked this question, because I talk to a lot of business owners and they say, well, I don't ask for the sale. Like, I just provide value, value, value. And like, people get it. Either they want my services or not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Nope. That's not going to happen. I guarantee you. And I explain it this way. So I'm sitting on the other side. Melissa's provided all this amazing value. But I'm like, well, I don't know. Should I work with her? Should not? I'm not sure. I don't know how much it costs. All this is going on in my head. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not asking her. And I won't follow it up, because now somebody else comes into my world that does something similar, who just says, well, would you be interested in learning how you could work with us more? I go, okay, because that's simple, right?
Yes.
So always think about, so yeah, I tell everybody, always make an offer. And that offer can be, would you be interested in learning more about how you could work with me or work with us? Whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, it doesn't have to be a hard sell, but it does have to be an invitation. Because on the other side, and when we think about this, right, we're all like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because I've been on the other side, I got it. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So, like, just taking that awkwardness out, just making the offer, no hard sell. You want to learn more? Cool, either way. But
Mm-hmm.
you take the awkwardness out of that person feeling like, well, I want to know more. I don't know how to ask, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. So inviting. So really calls to action can be thought of just invitations.
Right, right.
Learn more about this topic. Here's, a link to this blog article. Or if you want to learn more about how we can support you, here's the next step. And just making sure that you are inviting to take
Yep,
that next step. That's really all it is. I
absolutely.
love how you just simplified that. When we think of a call to action, it's an invitation.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Love
right.
that. Love
Yeah,
that.
it's right. Instead of getting all complicated and like, sales are just conversations, right? Sales conversations with people. Here's what I can do for you. Would you like my help?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I love that. So again, going back to, strategically telling stories that people can connect with, help them understand, inviting them to take the next step, whatever that next step might be. Um, kind of going into, I want to say like these are the do's, maybe going into some of the don'ts. What are some of the things that you see with, maybe clients when they first start working with you? Or certainly there's plenty of examples out there in the business world of maybe some common marketing mistakes that you see people making, like the intentions were there, but it's just falling a little bit flat.
Right, exactly. Sure. I think, yeah, I think that's part of, right, what got me into this was seeing that people had some really great stories that just weren't landing. They were missing the parts. So I think probably one of the keys, and this could be on the other side too, we could have brought this up, was building the bridge. So
Yes.
this is my story. This is a lesson. You got to build people the bridge. They are not going to get it. Like, I know we all think, oh, if I tell this story, like they're going to come up with, no, you got to leave breadcrumbs across, be very intentional. Like, this is a lesson here, people. Nobody's
Yep.
going to get offended, and we're not going to make the connection if you don't. So
Hmm.
I'd say that is huge. Um, another don't, kind of, we've talked about this, but leaving people in a bad emotional spot. I know a woman who talks about being homeless and then she got involved in an MLM and it changed her life. But the majority of the time is spent in being in a homeless, living in her car with her dogs. And like you really feel that, right? And
Yes.
that's kind of where she leaves you because she kind of then says, well, then I got involved and my life changed. Well, I'm
So
still
she kind
back.
of fast forward through the whole transition, and we go to happily ever after. This was my before,
Exactly.
this was my after, but we kind
Right.
of missed how did we get from here to there?
Well, yeah, we miss that. Plus, we miss the emotion, right? Because, like,
Hmm.
we're still in the car with her and her dogs, and she's gone on to prosperity. And in your mind, it's like a disconnect. I'm like, I, yeah, so I'm still here feeling this emotional. I'm not going to take any action with her.
Yes. Yes. So you've got to be the guide. You've got to be the tour guide. You've got to be that facilitator of we're leading people from here and we're going through it, and then here we are at the end. It's got to be complete. So it's really tying up some of those loose ends or filling those gaps, like you had said, gaps in the story or gaps in the story and the lesson, that bridge to then here's the lesson, here's how, we can help, or here's your next step, or here's what I invite you to do about this to avoid, having this issue, in your life or your business, that sort of a thing. It's really about filling those gaps, it sounds like.
Um, yeah, very, and I think very succinctly too, right? Because that tends to be the other thing that people do. Like, stories are not just a string of events. Stories, again, have a very clear beginning, middle, end, and a lesson.
Mhm.
And what we tend to do is like glom a string of events together and make that try to mean something, or like get really in the weeds of details that nobody cares about. And so people fall off instead of, one sentence for your beginning, one sentence for your middle, one sentence for your end. And you can do it, trust me, you really can. But we
Yes.
might grant you two or three, right? Which should still be better because sometimes
Hmm.
people can give you 20 minutes and somewhere in all the wandering, you're like, I got lost. Like I checked out, me
Yes.
personally. Yeah. I'm like, I'm somewhere else. I'm traveling above my head. I have no
Hmm.
idea what people are saying.
Yes, yes. And our attention spans are short. So keeping your audience engaged, keeping it clear, succinct, making sure that you're connecting the dots, helping them connect the dots, I should say, leading them through that, that's the most important thing when you're telling
Right.
stories. Other common marketing mistakes that you see out there.
Um, yeah, you could go like there are so many. I think we get hung up in trying to do everything, right? Do all the social
Yes.
media challenges, all the everything. And at least when I work with people, I kind of say, okay, if you hate Facebook, don't do Facebook. Let's not make it more painful than it has to be. Pick one channel initially, and we can add another one on, but pick one that you want to focus on where you know that your audience is living, and choose that. Um, yeah, and right.
Yeah, not spreading yourself too thin. So we've got our stories, we've got our invitations. We understand that we need to say this in a way that is succinct and clear and makes the connection, teaches the lesson, and we don't want to spread ourselves too thin by having it everywhere, even places that we don't personally want to be. It sounds like we want to be very focused and strategic where we are sharing this message.
Absolutely. And right, and then broaden it out as your message gets better and clearer, right?
Yes.
I would say that's another huge thing is practice or ask somebody to listen to your pitch, who's going to be honest with you, right? And say, like, I don't get it, or I get it, or that doesn't make any sense, or this part seems to me it's more important than this part that you're focusing on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Who do you recommend that you ask to review your stories or to help you with this? Obviously, we don't want to ask just anybody for their advice, because I know we've all had that unsolicited advice from that person who's really not in our shoes. They're not in the arena with us. So it's kind of like, do I need to listen to this person? Do they really know what they're talking about? Where like, who is a good person to ask for reliable, good feedback when it comes to our story and our marketing?
Right, other than me or you.
Yes. Yes. Other than one of us who've been there and done that. Yes. So like, if you're looking
Oh.
for, um, is it maybe members of your team? Is it maybe like some of your current clients? Like, where do you try out these stories in a safe but smart place?
Exactly. I think that's a great question. And I'm thinking, so yeah, I can see, I like the idea of your clients. I usually tell people networking, and you don't even
Right.
actually have to ask people, as long as you're paying attention, that because people will lean in
Mm-hmm.
when they're interested in what you're saying, they'll lean back, right? When they're not interested in what you're saying. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean you're about your message,
Mm-hmm.
as more as like they're not interested in, right, in, but typically it's a pretty good indicator. um but yeah, then like if you have a coach,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great place to utilize their services, because you're
Yes.
right, you make an excellent point in the sense of we need to find somebody who has our best interests at heart, right? Not
Yes.
somebody who thinks they know better, or whatever the ego thing is going on there. We
Mm-hmm.
need that cheerleader
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, like, yeah, gonna tell you when you look bad, right, in a dress, go like, yeah, don't buy that dress. That's a
Yes.
person we're looking for. So yeah, I would say a coach. And I'm sure everybody's connected in communities too. That's another great way. uh, just ask in a community, say, hey, I'm working on my introduction. Would a
Mm-hmm.
couple people be interested in joining me on Zoom? I could run through it and give me feedback. I think uh, if we ask, people are more than willing to help. And it's so much easier on this side, right? When you're giving feedback
Yes.
than being the person that's had to, like, suss it out of our heads, write it down, practice it, and everything. And we sometimes get invested in those words that really don't matter, right? But we're like, ooh, I really like that word.
Yes. Yes. We start getting too wordy, or we start to lose people because we know our work and our industry so well that that's when the jargon starts to sneak in. And then you're like, wait a minute, you lost me. I don't understand what this means. But I love the two things that really stood out to me, what you just talked about. having a coach. I recorded a podcast episode recently about, what to look for in hiring a good coach. And so going back to, having those advisors, that mentorship as you're growing your business, that's huge. But I love that you also mentioned other online communities and certainly networking. That's a great place to practice and figure out what lands and what doesn't. And you're right. When you ask, people are usually willing to help, especially if you are very specific with what you need and you take the least amount of their time as necessary in order, like being prepared. I'm going to take 10 minutes. I want to try out a couple of different versions of my introduction that I've written. Tell me which one you like the best, or are there certain aspects of each one that you like? And then I can kind of marry them all together, that sort of a thing. Just being very respectful of others' time, but they're usually willing to give that if you're prepared and are willing to reciprocate as well.
Right? I was going to say, you hit on it, reciprocity, right? Because they
Yes.
know in their heads, okay, when I need someone, I know I can reach out to Melissa now because,
Yes.
I helped her. So yeah, it also creates a great, right, collaboration and connection with other people in the same space, because
Yes.
it can get lonely out here as solopreneurs. So it's always good to have those kind of connections of people that you can ask things of.
Absolutely. And I think that going back to my original statement, where a lot of business owners that I know and I talk with on a regular basis, they're also trying to figure out this marketing thing. Some things land, some things don't, and they're always tweaking. And so having that peer to go back and forth and get some feedback from is really, really helpful. So one of the things that you had mentioned is, focusing your marketing. Maybe we don't need to be on all social media channels and spreading ourselves way too thin with our messaging. Besides social media, where are some other places that you're seeing people be successful in their marketing right now?
Sure. I think that's a great question, right? So marketing is such a fun field, like anything you can think of. Um, yeah, the promotional materials. I was thinking back, I had a conversation with a gal who did promotional materials, and she was talking about her messaging. And I think she said they could put uh, branding on socks. And I said, well, here's your tagline. We can brand your underwear if you want us to, right? Because, yeah, like we're going to always remember
People
that.
are going to remember that. If nothing else, it's catchy and it's funny and it sticks. Yes.
Right? And if they can brand my underwear, I'm pretty sure they can brand anything.
Anything else.
Imagine. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Melissa Swink and Co. underwear coming for, our holiday gift giving this year. Just kidding. Just kidding, everybody. But that brings an excellent point. So,
Great.
yes.
Great. Yeah. So just thinking outside the box, really. But I think, podcasting is an awesome one. Books are huge right now, books and journals, in the sense like there's so many opportunities now to do collaborations that will put you on bestseller lists.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because you were sharing with me that you don't necessarily have to write an entire book all by yourself in order to appear in a book or become a published author. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very cool thing. And that's why I'm an international bestseller, because I was in a collaboration with 261 women entrepreneurs. And
wow.
So you think about it this way, like when you're solo, you're doing all the promotion yourself. When you're in a book with 261 other people, there's 262 of you doing promotion, right?
Yes.
So right there, like night and day kind of difference. Less work, obviously, than writing a whole book yourself, because you're contributing some portion of the book. A community, you're developing, typically communities develop around projects like that, especially one of that size. Now it was, she did a phenomenal job, Deb Drummond, in the sense like she built summits leading up to the book, summits after the book was announced until the launch. There'll be 4 summits now. There's a 5-year book tour planned. So it's on a massive scale. And I haven't
That's
seen,
amazing.
right, too many others that do quite that big a scale, but still, you're still getting a lot of bang for your buck. I know a gal who does journals, and she's creating a super cool thing. So there's going to be a QR code for each author, and then they're going to have a little video, and they're going to talk about I think the first journal's on gratitude, like
Okay.
what gratitude means to them, how they practice gratitude, whatever it is they want to share about gratitude, and that
Mhm.
will be your journal prompt.
Wow. Very
Right?
cool.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's going to be awesome. But she also does journals or books. She does books as
Mhm.
well on resilience, for instance. And then you
Mhm.
have all these contributors, and typically her books do go to Amazon #1 bestseller.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah. So, and
That's
really
amazing.
a lot of different price points, but it can be very, very affordable. I mean, way more affordable than what you're thinking in your head, and way more
Than
affordable
writing
than
and
writing.
publishing your own book. Yes.
Exactly.
Collaborations, and collaborations don't even have to just be in the book or the journaling space. I mean, there's event collaborations. There's so many great opportunities to really pool resources and cross promote to different audiences, things like that. Other areas of marketing that you can think of that are going really well for people right now, Leslie?
Well, yeah, this is a kind of a brand new one, and actually, the 262 project I'm involved with, they did this, and this is another unique aspect of that project, is a wine club. And again,
Interesting.
right, this is so much more affordable than you could even imagine. But creating your own wine club, they will create a label for you. It has an NFT code. Like it's super high scale, and then they do like a revenue share on the wine. So at some point
Interesting.
you would get your money back, right? But
Hmm.
a very sort of upscale exclusive marketing strategy that will definitely set people apart to have a
Would this
wine
be
club.
like for client gifts, or
It could be
how
anything.
would
So
you
you
apply that?
well, you could, so like the 262 is using it in the sense of people can buy and you can do it like by the case or by the month or a one-time purchase, and then part of those proceeds go back to the 262, right?
Hmm.
So they're doing it sort of as a fundraising thing. I know somebody
Okay.
who's used it for a nonprofit, and then she had like an etched wine bottle made, and they auctioned it off for a lot of money for the nonprofit. Um,
Interesting.
so you could use it for clients. You could use it as
Mhm.
like, we have a wine club. Join us and purchase from us to support. Like we're giving proceeds to, a
Mhm.
charity, or
Mhm.
however you wanted to do that, right? So
Yes.
many
Okay.
different ways. But now you have a lovely bottle of wine with your logo, your name. It's a kind of a almost one of a kind piece of artwork with the NFT. They're talking about in sometime in the future it'd be valuable.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't know. I mean,
Very
it's
cool.
all that stuff is kind of
So
conjecture
there,
at this point, but
overall, I mean, marketing ideas are everywhere, and it's not just confined to social media. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that it needs to be all you. It can be in collaboration with other people. It can also not only promote your business, but also give back as well. There's just so many different areas. Leslie, one of the things that you had mentioned to us as we were talking here is, getting some help with formulating your stories, because sometimes we're just so close to our own that we can't even see it for ourselves. I talk about it as like trying to read the label from inside the bottle. And I know you have a free strategic story session. Can you share a little bit more about that? And if our listeners are interested in getting some help with formulating their stories, where can they book a session with you in order to get some support in that area?
absolutely. I would love to do that. I mean, I get a lot of joy out of pulling stories out of people. So, Yeah. And then I just blanked out, right? So the URL is getfreesession, no A. So GETFREESESSION.com, getfreesession.com. And in that, we'll do a lot like we did here, right? Have a conversation. But you tell me your story and what you want to do and what your goals are, maybe what the challenges you're seeing with the story are. And between you and I, we'll be able to pull out those things that make you super unique and make what you do so valuable for the world. I was telling Melissa right before this, I met with a gal who said to me, she said, I'm a brand photographer. And then she said, no, I'm more than that. And when she told me her story, I was like, oh my gosh, you connected on an emotional level. Like, I get it. You're way more than a brand photographer. I want to work with you. So those are the things that often we just need somebody else to recognize our greatness. And there is greatness in every one of you.
Yes.
So yeah, free session.
I love that.
I'll get it confused in my head. Getfreesession.com.
Love that. That's super easy. Getfreesession.com for a free story strategic session. Love that, because again, it's so hard for us to see our own stories where it's like we can share something. It's like, well, but it's not quite that. Like, that's oversimplified. I also do this, or I do more than just that. I'm more than just a virtual assistant. I'm more than just a marketing strategist. Like, there's always more to it. And that more to it is what really sets us apart and makes us unique and makes people connect and ultimately want to work with us. So thank you so much, Leslie, for sharing all of your knowledge with us today. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Would love to hear how you are using marketing to grow your business beyond you. Follow, subscribe, make sure that you don't miss another upcoming episode where we talk about how to grow and scale your business with, maximizing your time, leveraging systems and processes in order to make things more efficient for you, and also building a team, because those are all valuable tools for ultimately growing and scaling your business beyond you. And that certainly includes marketing. So Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see everyone in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Make Space for More. We know these insights are valuable, and we hope you are inspired to keep growing your business beyond you. Remember, growth is a journey, and you don't have to go it alone. Until next time, keep automating, delegating, and elevating your business. This is Melissa Swink, and I'll see you on the next episode of Make Space for More.